Let's appreciate what happened to the second and third generation immigrant farmer. Let's go to the farm now. We've understood the white beans with regards to workers and immigrants, but let's go see what happened to those who were able to get a farm. Because machines in this era changed farming. Farming became a capital investment, which required skill, capital, loans, and credit. A farmer's income became erratic. Farming became mechanized. So you can imagine steel plows, mowing machines, reapers, harvesters, improved cotton gins. All of this encouraged the farmers to go into debt so as to participate in this expanding market. Land cost money. Machines cost money. So farmers had to borrow, hoping that the prices of their harvest would stay high so that they could then turn around and pay the bank for the loan, the railroad for the transportation, the grain merchant for handling, and then the elevator for storing their products. But farmers found the prices for their produce going down and the prices of their transportation and loans going up. And meanwhile, monopolist bankers and monopolist railroads could charge what they liked. Farmers who could not pay their debts lost their homes and land, and they became tenants. And by 1880, 25% of all farms were rented by tenants, and the number kept rising. Today, not even 5% of farms in the U.S. are owned by individuals. Many farmers didn't even have enough money to rent, so they became Mexicans. They became farm workers. By 1900, there's going to be 4.5 million farm workers in this country. And it was the fate that awaited every farmer who could not pay his debts. Now, the government played its part in helping the bankers and hurting the farmers. It kept the amount of money based on the gold supply steady while the population soared. So there was less and less money in circulation. So the farmer had to pay off debts in dollars that were harder to get. So the bankers getting the loans back were getting dollars worth more than when they loaned them out. It was a kind of interest on top of interest. And that is why so much talk of farmers' movements in those days that had to do with putting more money in circulation by printing greenbacks, paper money in which there was no gold in the treasury, or by making silver the basis for issuing money. So the first Farmers Alliance movement began in Texas. And why? But basically, and especially in the South, the crop lien system was most brutal. And the system goes like this. The farmer would get the things needed from the merchant, the use of the cotton gin in harvest time, whatever supplies were necessary. And since the farmer did not have any money to pay, the merchant would get a lien, a mortgage on the farmer's crop. And of course, on which the farmer might pay 25% interest. So historians write that this system became, for millions of Southerners, both white and black, little more than a modified form of slavery. The farmer would owe more money every year until finally the farm was taken away and the family became tenants. And if the male died, the family and the children inherited the debt. So the Granger movement and the Farmers Alliance spread new ideas and a new spirit in the 1880s and 1890s. And eventually this movement for change will create one of the most challenging crusades against the Democrats and the Republicans that this nation has ever witnessed. It was known as the People's Party or the Populist Party. And what's so important about the People's Party or the Populist Party is that it convened in 1890 in Topeka, Kansas. And the People's Party or the Populist Party had attempted to try to organize and challenge the Democrats and the Republicans. It was the most challenging crusade ever because they viewed the Democratic Party and the Republican Party as being in cahoots with big business, and it was the farmers were just getting the short end of the stick. So I'm going to read a statement from one of the most fiery speakers, and her name was Mary Elizabeth Lease. And they called her Mary Yellen Lease, as she became fondly known. And it reveals the extent of their frustration with the Democrats and Republicans. So if you can keep her picture up for a while here, what I want to do is I want to share her words. And hopefully I can do justice to her words. And she said, she made in a speech the following: Wall Street owns the country. It is no longer a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, but a government of Wall Street, by Wall Street, and for Wall Street. Our laws are the output of a system which clothes rascals in robes and honesty in rags. The politicians said we suffered from overproduction. Overproduction when 10,000 little children starve to death every year in the United States and over 100,000 shop girls in New York are forced to sell their virtue for bread. There are 30 men in the United States whose aggregate wealth is over $1.5 billion. There are 500,000 looking for work. We want money, land, and transportation. We want the abolition of the national banks, and we want the power to make loans direct from the government. We want the accursed foreclosure system wiped out, and we will stand by our homes and stay by our firesides by force if necessary, and we will not pay our debts to the loan shark companies until the government pays its debts to us. The people are at bay. Let the bloodhounds of money who have dogged us thus far beware. So when we take a look at the populace consisted of Southerners, tenants, small landowners, and then, of course, because it was in the South, there was segregated units, so they had a separate organization for blacks. But it also consisted of Midwest farmers and, most importantly, elements within the labor movement. And this was the first important movement to insist that laissez-faire economics was not the solution to industrial problems and that the federal government had responsibility for the nation's social well-being. So this generation of immigrants, along with farmers and along with workers, are going to organize together because the populists tried to unite farmers who were divided on racial barriers and create alliances with labor unions who also were part of the immigrant experience. And the first test of solidarity was the Depression of 1894 and the election of 1896. And the Depression of 1894 laid off workers, cut wages,